savings accounts, I'm not really sure on. I tried to read a Washington Post synopsis of this healthcare, and it was hard to understand the synopsis because it ended up in a circular argument. One argument took you back to another argument. Okay, my take on this, having just finished 3 years of school, is that when you have something that is that wrong, you throw it away and you start over again. This is like watching a reality show. You know, let's grab several hundred lawyers, put them in a room to write the most complex bill in history and see what happens. Okay, what do you get? You get something that nobody understood, and even the president didn't know what was in it. You throw it away. You know, my own take on being someone who is who lives at the poverty level is and tries to write things and have professors who try to make you condense things is it needs to be simpler. The dialogue needs to be simple. You know, my own thoughts on this is you throw it away. The first thing you do is you broaden the scope. You allow you broaden the competition in the private sector. In the public sector, this was something else that we consolidated. I think you need to consolidate all the medical programs into one. That's number one. I think a second thing you do is you take the patents for subscriptions and you extend them in exchange for a reduced price. You reduce the prices of or prescriptions by 50% and phase in the reduction over a period of time in exchange for them having more time having that patent. Okay, you put money into the system, plus you're giving money to the insurance companies. You give people a card so they guarantee them competition. I'm rated at the Metro Hospital. I know what it's like for social medicine. Okay, some of it's okay, but when it's bad, you don't have a choice. You have to have a choice. You have to have an opt-in. You have to have an opt-out. And I opt out because my time's up.
Sandy, in 2006, Jennifer Bruder used a loophole in the Help America Vote Act to allow people to register and vote the same day. As a result, over 200,000 unverified voters were counted. What would you do to prevent this from happening again?
I am totally against that golden week. That was absolutely ridiculous, and it was a travesty. What I'm going to do, first of all, Ohio is so behind other states. I already did something. I last year filed a suit against the current Secretary of State. Why? Because I'm facing an opponent who's raised a couple $1 million from lobbyists and special interest groups, so that I am a candidate who is self-funding. And because of that, in Ohio, we have laws on the books that would have allowed my opponents the caps to come off of his donations. Federal law already struck that down, but Ohio is hanging out there not in compliance. So I filed my lawsuit. Within a few months, I was granted a permanent injunction. Thank you, injunction. You need lawyers. I have a son who's a lawyer, so I lost my train of thought there for a minute. But if we look at the Help America Vote Act, Ohio is not in compliance with that currently. Secretary of State Bruner, what she did is when she had 200,000 new voter registrations that did not match data, she sat on them, and she shouldn't have. What she should have done is sent those to the local boards of elections so they could start doing the jobs to see if that voter was truly eligible to vote. I'm going to address third-party organizations like Acorn. When they come into Ohio and break our laws when I'm Secretary of State, they will face consequences. And I will go to you, I will lobby. Well, what's happening now is they're coming into Ohio, breaking Ohio laws, and then we've got these liberal judges who aren't doing anything. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. If you follow the news, they lost their license in Ohio, but I don't trust them. I don't trust that they won't come in under other names. And they've already done that on the federal level. We put so much pressure on them because they're tax-exempt status. They say they're nonpartisan. Right. They're an extension of the Democratic Party. When their Democrats get in, then the Democrats turn around and vote our tax dollars to them to spend. Well, we put pressure on them so they weren't going to get federal funding, except a judge said, oh yeah, well now you can go through cities and villages, and now they're eligible to get billions of dollars of new money. It is simply wrong, and I'm strong enough to stand up for what's right, irregardless of whether I keep the job or not. If we had more elected officials like that, we wouldn't be in the situation we are today.
Thank you. question is for Seth. Why is it important to have our state auditor be a CPA?
So softball. That was wonderful. Thank you. Good. I think it's real important. I mean, I touched on a lot of this earlier. I mean, from a management perspective and how you run the auditor's office. Let me just deal with that for a minute. You know, the auditor of state is different. With all due respect to my friend here, who is a county auditor. I've been accused of disparaging county auditors, and I'm not a bit. But they're two very separate positions. The auditor of a county is very much an administrative position where I mean, Sandy can certainly explain it better than I could, but where they're dealing with the budget, they're valuing properties, they're dealing with dog licenses, they're dealing with the weights and measures department, all very important stuff, consumer protection for you here at the local level. The auditor of state, and there's some confusion because they share a title, is really in the process and in the business of issuing financial audit reports. These are audit reports just like in private business. They're a little different because it's government accounting. Would get their financial statements, their balance sheets, their income statements, their cash flow statements, their notes to the financial statements. This is what CPAs do. Matter of fact, it's illegal in the state of Ohio for a non-CPA to issue a financial audited statement to a private business. So once again, only in politics is where you can break the law and get away with it. But so let me tell you that I think it's important that you have an auditor of state who can be your eyes and ears, that understands the difference between a balance sheet and income statement, that understands what a structural deficit is, that understands when there are unfunded liabilities, what that looks like and means, that can stand up, that not just has a staff that's able to do it, but where the buck stops, there's also an understanding of the actual job itself. And I think as a CPA who is, again, demonstrated, and I won't talk too much more about that, the independence and objectivity, which, by the way, are two very critical traits that any CPA learns as soon as they're working through the accounting degree or sitting for the exam. Those are the two things that must exist in order for a good audit to be issued, and I think that's important politically. Let me just say, and I'm not going to say which opponent it was because I had two, one in the primary and one in the general, so I'm not picking on my opponent, but just today one of my opponents came out with a plan whereby he said that what he would do is put together a new commission where the Attorney General, the Auditor of State, and the Treasurer would all get together and certify revenue estimates for the state of Ohio. Folks, I got to tell you that the minute an auditor, who's supposed to be objective and independent, certifies estimates, they kind of lose objectivity when it comes time to audit the actual historical statements. The point is, you need an auditor who understands what it means to issue a good audit, and I think I'm the only guy in this race that can.
Next question is for Senator Grandel. What, if anything, can be done at the state level to assure the Port Authority of Cleveland doesn't shut down because of a complete lack of maritime experience on the Port Authority board?
I forgot to get my campaign manager to ask me a snowball set.
I have my campaign manager here.
I'm only kidding. This whole Port Authority thing's interesting. A couple of years ago, the Cleveland Port Authority slid into some legislation, some language that allowed them to hide some of what they were doing. And Senator Seitz and I actually slid into another bill language to take away that power from the Cleveland Port Authorities, and what they did had to be transparent and open to the public. To the extent that these port authorities, have become sort of economic government quasi-entities on their own. They're not elected by anybody. I think they really have some issues at the state legislative level to address by really spelling out the parameters and limiting the parameters of what these port authorities are doing, requiring that they actually have a port authority experience. I mean, they're supposed to be there to help us bring in more ships and more jobs to the port and help us with an airport, and Cleveland Airport needs a lot of help. And they're supposed to be dealing with those port transportation issues. Somehow they've been packed with politicians and cronies and they've been dealing with economic development